Hello and welcome back to Slim Bits. Today we'll be discussing episode 18 of KILLROY, Legion of Doom. I think you can tell by the title that this is very much supposed to be my take on DC's Legion of Doom, that group of supervillains who band together to form their own little team of Justice League counterparts. So the idea for this episode came apart in a variety of different ways. First and foremost, by this being episode 18 of KILLROY, I was starting to run out of ideas that I had originally wanted to do for KILLROY. So I thought, well, maybe as a challenge, KILLROY will be missing for most of the episode. I could use that as a creative exercise, and then I thought, well, maybe it's going to be about the police captain and like her day-to-day life as a cop in Gritty City. But then I reminded myself that back in my early days of Newgrounds, when I was making series like the original run of KILLROY, Star Work, the Buffoon and Company, I had an idea for a fourth series that was surrounding around these loser supervillains who couldn't get along, couldn't get anything done, and they were all just like these incompetent egomaniacs. And I never did anything with it. I designed characters for it that were sort of like based on pastiches of Legion of Doom characters, and I just never really did anything for it. But with this season of KILLROY, with us introducing a group like a Justice League stand-in, it would only make sense that there would be a Legion of Doom stand-in to oppose them. So I had a bunch of these villains that I had originally cooked up that were all based on, famous supervillains like Lex Luthor and Gorilla Grodd and Bizarro, Black Manta, and like I can name who all these guys are meant to be after. But I never did anything with them because I couldn't find a decent enough hook for an entire KILLROY episode. And then when it came time to, what am I going to do with this episode where KILLROY is missing, I thought, oh, okay, it's just it's a meeting night between the members of I.N.S.I.D.I.O.U.S, which they never even came up with a full acronym for themselves. Which is to say, I couldn't come up with a full acronym for the team. So yeah, that's where this came about, and it was good to finally put to use these characters that I had thought up, but like couldn't really do anything with until I decided, hey, let's just put them back together in the group that they were always meant to be in, like these bickering, distinct characters who could have served as like the backdoor pilot for a completely different series. So all these characters had to have be an archetype or have like one very centralized theme about them, something that could carry an entire series with. So I really do love these guys, and I don't know. I'm sure somebody else could have done something with these characters. I guess all I ever really had was a pilot and how that could like pseudo tie in to a KILLROY episode. So as we'll see here, we've brought back Mr. Kevin Getz as the actor who crashes their club meeting. He was great. As I mentioned before, he came to me wanting to do a cartoon, and before I knew that he could do such a good job as the cinephile, back in one of the earlier episodes, I noticed that Kevin has a real he works in radio, and he has a very good everyman quality to his voice. So in this crazy heightened KILLROY reality, I just thought, let's just make him like an average Joe who's like the straight man to all these goofy supervillains that he just so happens to come across. And eagle-eared listeners will also recognize the voice of the very talented Mr. Zach LeBlanc. He's a guy who I usually fall back to whenever I need someone to do a voice, because like for most of the voices of these characters, it's just me like changing the pitch of my voice, and that would get like really, really, really noticeable, and it has been throughout the rest of the series. So I'm just so grateful that Zach was able to lend his time and his considerable talents to being Blastered. And I think like even though this isn't really much of a stretch in terms of what he's capable of doing as a voice actor, because he's very capable of going like just insane, I think he has a very good rant quality to his voice. Like if you can get him going, that would come off quite well. And so I wanted that anger and that ferocity in his voice. Oh, Chrome Dome. So Chrome Dome, I guess he was supposed to be our stand-in for the supervillain Brainiac, which in the old Super Friends days was like this green alien character with a computer brain. And then I think they changed him to be a robot. But the green alien one had like this black Speedo, like he was just walking around in his underwear. So I decided to combine the two for my interpretation of Brainiac. So he's just this jammering robot who happens to wear boxer shorts. And it's just it's a design that doesn't work, but, makes me fucking laugh. And here we see that Mr. Joel Thompson is reprising his role as Drunk Tank. I did this because very similar to the Captain Clown character who was introduced in an earlier episode, but managed to get away from Kilroy and then later was killed off in a future episode. I realized that my mandate of Kilroy for somehow by the end of the episode he'll always get his man. And that didn't happen in Drunk Tank's debut episode. Superhero threw him into a prison, so he wound up surviving that. So this was a way for me to tie up that loose end. Okay, so now we're kind of getting to the point where this episode is wrapping up. There's the giant monster that's destroying the city. I've never done a giant rampaging monster in a Kilroy series, even though that's very much a comic book superhero staple. So that was just my way of checking off that box for the series. I think. Some of those characters that you just saw running by were repeats from I think the earlier Kilroy series. I just had those models running, kicking around, so I decided to reuse them and throw them into this 18th episode here. Oh god, I love how Chrome Dome, you can't really see it now, but he was still gesturing and doing robot arm stuff in the back. I guess my idea there was that he's just a character who never stops moving, much in the same way Drunk Tank here never stops swaying. Oh, Joel is so good at that voice. I should ask him if he had a couple of beers before he recorded this episode. I know he did for the first time I asked him to be Drunk Tank. And here's Kilroy and Jay here to remind you that this is a Kilroy series. But yeah, it's interesting having worked on this entire series. If you were to if you were to marathon a couple of these episodes, here is a solid 8 minutes where Kilroy doesn't appear and isn't heard, and it's nice to get some other perspectives and to kind of flex that creative muscle for storytelling. Anyways, thank you all for listening to this. Thank you all for listening to me ramble on for a couple of minutes about an episode I put out a couple of years ago. Stay tuned for more Slim Bits. Bye.